Stay with me. This is the full story. This is everything you need to know. Welcome back to the channel. If you want deeply reported context, sharp timeline breakdowns, and the clearest explanation of what these attacks mean for the world, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. In this long-form episode, we'll walk through what happened, what triggered it, who's involved, what the military moves tell us, the humanitarian cost, the likely next steps, and the one scenario nobody is talking about that could change everything. By the end of this video, you'll know the sequence of strikes and counterstrikes, which military assets were targeted, how regional proxies are being drawn in, what the US, Europe, and the UN are doing, and 3 plausible futures that could play out in the coming days. Start with the short version. Over the last 72 hours, we've seen an escalation that moved well beyond cross-border raids. Israeli forces launched intensive strikes in Gaza and, according to multiple reports, began a ground operation in Gaza City. At the same time, Israeli airstrikes extended to targets farther afield, including a strategic port in Yemen that Israel says is being used to move arms to Houthi rebels. Meanwhile, Tehran has not stayed silent. In previous rounds of the broader confrontation, Iran fired missiles and drones at Israeli territory, and intelligence services on both sides have been active. To understand why this is dangerous, you need 3 pieces of context. First, Israel and Iran have been locked in a shadow war for years. Strikes, sabotage, assassinations, and proxy clashes across Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. Those actions were carefully calibrated to stay below the threshold of all-out war. What's different now is scale and simultaneity. Multiple theaters are active at once, and that multiplies the risk of miscalculation. Second, regional proxies are activated. Iran's influence extends to Hezbollah in Lebanon, to Houthi forces in Yemen, and to militias in Iraq and Syria. When one front flares, these groups often respond, sometimes in concert, sometimes opportunistically. That raises the possibility of a chain reaction, strikes in one country prompting retaliation in another. Third, great power politics. The US remains Israel's closest security partner. European governments are split between condemnation of civilian suffering and political support for Israel's security claims. Russia and others are watching and recalculating. Diplomatic routes exist, but when combat is moving fast, diplomacy frequently lags behind events on the ground. Let's break down the main actors and what each wants. Israel. Officially, Israel says its strikes are aimed at degrading Iran's military capabilities and stopping weapons transfers to hostile proxies. Israeli leaders also face intense domestic pressure to respond decisively when its territory or citizens are attacked. Tehran frames its responses as deterrence and defense of allies. But Iran also faces internal political considerations. Showing strength externally can bolster a regime under pressure. Houthi rebels, Yemen. Their recent anti-Israel actions are a direct show of solidarity with Palestinians and a means to pressure Gulf states. Striking ports like Hodeidah is a strategic move. It targets a logistics node that Iran is accused of using to supply proxies. Hezbollah, Lebanon, a large and capable armed force on Israel's border. Any significant escalation in Gaza or direct strikes on Iranian assets can draw Hezbollah in, and that opens a second front on Israel's northern border. The United States and allies. The US must decide how directly to back Israel militarily while managing relations with Gulf partners and avoiding an escalation that could ignite a wider regional war. Diplomatic pressure is high, but boots-on-the-ground options are politically fraught. Now, the military reading. When a state strikes naval infrastructure, nuclear-adjacent facilities, or command and control hubs, it signals an attempt to degrade the other side's ability to sustain long-term operations. Precision strikes on command centers aim to decapitate decision-making. Attacks on ports or supply lines are designed to choke proxy resupply routes. Missile and drone salvos that cross borders test air defenses and force responses that can expose vulnerabilities. When strikes happen in multiple countries or against multiple types of targets in quick succession, that indicates either coordinated planning or highly risky rapid escalation. Either way, it shrinks the room for careful de-escalation. Don't lose sight of the human cost. Airstrikes in densely populated areas produce civilian casualties, massive displacement, and collapsing infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, and media facilities are all being severely impacted. In parallel, there is an intense information war. State media, local correspondents, and social platforms all produce competing narratives. Verifying footage and claims in real time is often impossible. That confusion is both intentional and consequential. Here are 3 realistic paths forward and what each would mean. Scenario A: de-escalation by diplomacy, 30% probability. Rapid diplomatic push, led by major powers and regional mediators, forces a tactical pause. Talks and hostage negotiations, possible concessions or symbolic withdrawals, and pressure on proxies to stand down. This would be the least destructive path but requires strong incentives and immediate cooling measures. If it happens, expect intense shuttle diplomacy, temporary ceasefires, and a surge in humanitarian aid corridors. Scenario B: prolonged, multi-front confrontation, 40% probability. Fighting continues with flare-ups across Gaza, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Multiple proxies engaged intermittently, periodic missile salvos, and localized ground operations. This is the worst for civilians. Prolonged displacement, infrastructure collapse, and regional economic shockwaves. The risk of accidental escalation to direct state-to-state warfare also threatens. Scenario C: rapid, intense state-to-state war, 30% probability. This is the nightmare scenario. Direct, sustained attacks between Iran and Israel, possibly involving strikes on critical infrastructure inside Iran and Israeli strikes into Iranian territory. Other states are drawn in, either by obligation or miscalculation. A regional war with global economic and security consequences is possible. This outcome becomes more likely if one side perceives an existential threat, or if deterrence fails catastrophically. What are the immediate indicators to monitor? 1 missile and drone launches, frequency, range, and targets. 2 movements of Hezbollah or other militant forces on borders. 3 naval activity around critical choke points. 4 public statements from the US, EU, Russia, China, especially any commitments to protect allies or provide strikes. 5 humanitarian access, whether aid routes are open or blocked. These signals will tell us whether the conflict is contained or spiraling. Prolonged conflict will hit global energy markets, shipping lanes, and investor confidence. Port strikes and instability in the Red Sea Gulf of Aden region increase shipping insurance costs and shipping costs. Markets react quickly to the prospect of supply disruptions. For everyday people globally, higher fuel prices, supply chain delays, and reduced investor confidence are the immediate fallout. Here's the wild card: misattribution. In a fog of war, a strike by proxy or a third party can be blamed on a state actor. False flag operations, whether accidental or intentional, can trigger disproportionate retaliation. Intelligent, careful states try to verify before they respond, but emotions run high and the pressure to do something is intense. That creates a terrifying opening for escalation. Take a moment to remember the people behind the headlines. Families fleeing neighborhoods under bombardment, medics trying to operate with limited supplies, fathers uploading short videos of their children seeking safety, journalists trying to document events while being targeted. These are not abstractions, they are human beings. When you see footage, remember the faces. If you want to help, hear what matters. Credible humanitarian organizations that operate on the ground need donations and political pressure. Share verified information, donate to reputable relief charities, and press your representatives to support humanitarian corridors and ceasefire diplomacy. Avoid amplifying unverified claims that could fuel panic. This is where we stand, a dangerous new chapter in a long-running conflict. The moves over the next days will define whether this becomes